Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are all having a blessed week. Mine's going really good. We turned cold here in California. I went out this morning and I just had on a flannel shirt and a pair of shorts when I took Mr. Broad on his walk, and I'll tell you what, it was cold out there. We're clear down in the 60s. That's cold for us. So listen, I wanted to talk to you for a minute about a very long curse. And you know what? If we're not careful, we can all bring curses upon ourselves by what we say. But this is a very long curse. And I just wanted to talk to you about that. So listen, it comes from 2 Kings 5:1. Now listen, I recorded this about 4 times over the last couple of weeks, and I always mess it up. The reason I mess it up is because Elijah the prophet, he passed the mantle on to Elijah. And it's hard not to say Elijah when you meet Elisha. So we're talking about Elisha, and if I get them mixed up and say Elijah, it's Elijah. All right, let's try to remember that, because I'll definitely mess it up. 2 Kings 5:1. Now Naaman, the captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance to Syria. And he was also a mighty man of valor. But he was a leper. So there's a problem. Naaman is a leper. Well, hey, there's a solution. Verse 2 says, And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captives out of the land of Israel, and among them this little maid. And the maid waited on Naaman's wife. And she said, you know what, it's too bad we're not over here, because if we were, we have a prophet that could heal your husband. And the wife listens to that. She goes, that's not too bad. So in verse 7 it goes on to say, And it came to pass when the king of Israel... So anyway, let me set this up. So the lady tells Naaman, and Naaman goes to the king. And then the king sends a letter to the king of Israel. And he says, hey, I'm going to send you my servant Naaman, and I want you to heal him of his leprosy. And it came to pass when the king of Israel read the letter that he rent his clothes and said, Am I God to kill and make alive? That this man does send this man to me to recover him of his leprosy? Therefore consider, I think he's trying to pick a fight with me. So the king of Israel says, I can't do this. What are you talking about? And he gets all upset. Well, Elisha hears about it and says, hey, don't panic. Send him over and we'll take care of it. So that's what happened. Naaman goes to see Elisha. And Elisha doesn't even come out to see him. He sends out a servant. And he tells the servant, I go out there and tell him, go dip in the Jordan 7 times and you'll be white as snow. So the servant went out to tell him that, and Naaman, he gets mad. I mean, he's mad. He's ready to kill everybody. Naaman was wroth and went away and said, Behold, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of his God and strike his hand over the whole place and recover the leper. So he was mad and he stomps off. And then his servants came near and spake unto him and said, My father, if that prophet bid thee to do some great thing, thou would have done it. How much more then he says to thee, Go dip in the river 7 times and you'll be clean. If he'd have told you to do something fantastic, you would have done it. So then went Naaman down, dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, and came away and looked, and his flesh was like the flesh of a little child. He's completely healed. So Naaman, something very fantastic happens within him. He's completely healed. And the prophet never even came out to see him. He just told him what to do. He went and did it, and now he's healed. So he comes back, and he offers Elisha clothes, gold, silver, you name it. He just offers him a bunch of stuff. And Elisha says, look, I don't want any of your stuff. You're good to go. And then Naaman has one other problem. He says, listen. He says, Elisha, listen, I got a problem. He says, in this thing I need the Lord to pardon thy servant. For when my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon me from this thing. So in other words, he's saying, listen, I know right now I'm clean. I'm cured. I know that your God is God. He's the one that just healed me. But when I get home, I got to go with the king into the house of Rimmon, and he worships there, and I have to stand there next to him and bow. And Elisha says, that's okay. You know that it's just a fake house of worship. You're covered. You're good to go. Go ahead. So then there's one more little problem that comes up, and that's Gehazi. Gehazi is Elisha's servant. And he says, no way, Jose. This ain't going to fly. This Syrian comes in here, this leper, and my master heals him and doesn't accept any of his money. Well, I'm going to go get some of it. And that's what he decides to do. He just takes off and he says, listen, you know, he's running after him, and Naaman, they obviously look behind him every once in a while to make sure no one's following, and they see him coming, so they stop. And Gehazi gets up and he says, listen, my master made a mistake. The minute you left, 3 guys came in, and they need some clothes and maybe a little bit of money. And Naaman says, take whatever you need. So he gives them a bunch of clothes, some gold, some silver, gives them a bunch of stuff. And old Gehazi takes off, and he takes the stuff home. Then he goes back to Elisha's compound, and he's sitting there. And then Elisha comes out. And he says, you know what? The whole time you were talking to Naaman, I was right there with you. I saw the whole thing. I know exactly what happened. Now, this is what he says to Gehazi. The leprosy, therefore, of Naaman shall cling to you and to thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence, a leper as white as snow. So because of his greed, that's all it was, greed, he took this money and these garments, and because of that, Elisha transferred the leprosy from Naaman over to Gehazi, and it says, it will be with you and your descendants forever. People, you know what that means? That means because of one man's greed, there is a leper colony somewhere on earth, whether it be somewhere in the Middle East, somewhere in Africa. There is a leper colony that can trace its roots all the way back to the sin of Gehazi to this day. People, listen, you have to be careful what you do. You have to be careful what you say, because sometimes you can get in a whole lot of trouble, and that trouble will stick with you for a long, long time. Let me just give you one example. One example of having something curse you that can curse you for your whole life is choosing the wrong person to marry. Ladies, when you're with a guy and there's things about him you don't like, do not marry the man. If there's red flags, don't marry the man. Men, if you're dating a girl and there's stuff about her you don't like, don't marry her. Wait for the right one, and don't live with them, don't shack up, don't do anything like that. And this is why, and I have told women this my whole life. Listen, if you're living with Mr. Wrong, when Mr. Right comes along, you'll never even know it, because you're living with Mr. Wrong. Mr. Right couldn't even ask you out. That is the best way I know to bring a curse upon yourself that's going to last a very long time is marrying the wrong person. So anyway, listen, I just want to give you something to think about. Heaven or hell, you choose. Just remember, once you take your last breath, it's a done deal.